What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Unbossed. I am Francesca Fiorentini in for the senator. So good to have you all here. It is a fantastic Friday, and joining me, oh my God, what a treat, Mr. Mike Figueredo, host of the Humanist Report. Mike, I can't believe we got you for this.
Well, thank you so much for the invite. I'm happy to be back. Happy to co-host with you. Always a treat to talk to you. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. Let's hope baby stays asleep. I mean, in my case, that's, also me. I should fall asleep right now. So anyway, if I pass out at any point in this stream, just, smelling salts. And everyone in the chat, make sure to send in all of your comments as we go through these stories. We got some good ones. We got some fun ones. Let's see, we're going to talk about a year into this Russia-Ukraine war. We're going to talk about Marianne Williamson primarying Joe Biden. Let's discuss. And then, of course, one more toy that Fox News wants to take aim at for being woke. We'll get into that at the end. So, of course, hit the like button, subscribe, let people know what you're watching, what you're doing, and let's get into this.
Fighting still a year later, a pretty lonely battle on the Republican side to wake up your own party to what they're supporting, which is Joe Biden's chief and craziest policy aim. Like, what is this?
Well, it doesn't feel very lonely from my standpoint, Tucker. You know, we just heard Mike McCall, one of my colleagues in Congress, talk about bipartisan support for this war against Russia and Ukraine. Yeah, there's bipartisan support among the American people.
In fact, there is bipartisan support among the American people, and we'll look into exactly what they support when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. But that was Fox News, that was Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene marking the 1-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a war that many people thought would be over pretty immediately and has dragged on now for a year. And the Ukrainians have put up quite a fight, of course, with a lot of weapons and help from the United States, which is exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying there, that she and other Republicans like Matt Gaetz are against the funding of Ukraine and helping them with their fight for their sovereignty. But just sort of this is a marker right now, right? This has been a year. There's been so much pain, death, and loss. The Ukrainian people still standing strong, clearly. Russian people losing their appetite for war as they see their loved ones sent off to battle without proper equipment. Putin increasingly painted into a corner by his own doing. And then of course you see Joe Biden kind of doing a little bit of a flex move, going to Kyiv this week. That happened early in the week. But let's just go back to this clip. And Mike, I wanna get your take. This war against Russia in Ukraine, and hang on, was that a chyron that said Ukrainian pimp? Can we go back to that? Yeah, another $10 billion in reference to the money that the United States is giving to Ukraine for the Ukrainian pimp. You guys, that's not a Photoshop job. That's straight up primetime Fox News. Again, this is arguably talking about President Zelensky, former comic. Some of us go on to do great things. And he, who, by the way, obviously has been fighting for defending his country and was the dude that Donald Trump put the squeeze on to try and dig up dirt on Joe Biden. But of course, we've forgotten all about that. But Mike, what does this tell you about the Republican Party and Marjorie?
I mean, the response to me is predictably despicable. But they like this because Putin, I think that they see themselves and their ambitions in Putin. Putin is a fascist, quite frankly. Putin is suppressing free speech. He inhibits any type of opposition towards him. And they view that as the type of blueprint. That's what they want. That's what they kind of saw in Donald Trump. So it's fascism. And it's not like Marjorie Taylor Greene has this critique of the military industrial complex. She is invested in these defense companies herself. It's not like she's critiqued, US aggression in the past or Western colonialism. This is just about her supporting a fascist because he has created a great blueprint for her that she wants to follow. And there's something distinctly Orwellian about a politician using anti-war, ostensibly anti-war talking points to support a war. Like, I feel like this is straight out of 1984, and it's It's disgusting. And I've got to shout out Kropotkin on Twitter, who said she heard that Putin invaded Georgia and she got really hopeful for a second. So that's why she supports it. So that was a great line.
That's amazing. I mean, look, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills a little bit when it comes to the Russia narrative generally, because I hate what liberal mainstream news, I mean, liberal in heavy quotations, what mainstream news has done to the Russia discussion. And I hate what the right, of course, has done. And I hate what some, what I would call bad faith lefties have talked about, which is like, there's clearly a link between the Republican Party in the United States of America and Putin's Kremlin. Like, hello, the amount of dark money they funneled to the Trump campaign in 2016 through the NRA, to say nothing of, yes, the collusion that of course is fake news and all of that. But here you have it persists. And thank you for calling it like it is, which is there is no whiff of anti-war sentiment here. Republicans have never met a war they don't like. They just don't want to actually give money to see any kind of minimal victory for Biden, maybe like Biden looking tough and whatnot. And they ultimately get some money from Russia themselves. So like, I don't know I feel nuts. I just feel like I'm crazy, actually. And that's what I think this story makes you feel. But speaking of what the American people do want, actually, people say that the United States should be supporting Ukraine against Russian aggression. 48% say they favor the US providing weapons to Ukraine, 29% opposed, 22% they're neither in favor nor opposed. In May 2022, so last year, less than 3 months into the war, 60% of adults say they were in favor of sending Ukraine weapons, and Americans are evenly divided about spending government funds either directly to Ukraine, with 37% in favor, 38% opposed, 23% saying neither. So it's sort of neck and neck, but there was more appetite when the war began. I guess I just want to look at what we have given, both in aid as well as weapons. So this is according to NBC News. More than 166 billion in military, humanitarian, and financial aid was pledged to Ukraine by 40 different countries. The United States, of course, topping that list, 77.6 billion. EU and members and other institutions, 58.2 billion. Now, it looks like though that effort is working. There's talk of things like F-16s. I gotta be honest with you, I would say a hard no, hard pass on giving out F-16s, right? And I think that it's interesting that the one person who was raising the flag and the alarm about the amount of money that we were spending to Ukraine, sort of like, hey, maybe we should check in about this, was Representative Ilhan Omar. And guess what? She got ousted from the House Foreign Oversight Committee, right? Foreign Relations Committee, excuse me. The one person who they could have worked with, Mike.
Yeah, and it's because they have never really been anti-war. And I think that this 1 year anniversary and declining support for USA to Ukraine is giving them this opportunity, in their view, to pounce and drive up this bizarre point that somehow Putin is the victim here. And they're hoping we'll forget that he's the individual who invaded. He is the aggressor here. No, I think that the American people, they don't have an appetite for war, right? So I think that it's a good dose of skepticism with the military-industrial complex is absolutely warranted when it comes to aid to Ukraine. We don't want to make sure that we're somehow prolonging the effort. We know that the military-industrial complex has a financial incentive to drag this out. But at the end of the day, this is imperialism, and the Ukrainian people have the right to defend themselves, because again, they were the ones who were invaded. They didn't choose to have Ukraine or have Russia invade them. So it's so bizarre that we're living in this Orwellian version of America where peace is war, Putin is the victim here. It does feel like we're being gaslit. Like I think it's best. Like it feels like we're going crazy here.
Absolutely, and I think that we can say both things, right? We can say that we have these honest critiques of the military-industrial complex, as well as that nations have a right to defend themselves against, invading countries. And hey, our country has been one of those in multiple instances. And giving some, so here's the next piece of this. This is just super rich, and we talked about this. Marjorie Taylor Greene's now introducing a bill to audit US aid to Ukraine, and honestly, I kind of agree with her on this one. Like, I'm not against auditing the money that goes to other countries, especially if it's partially for weapons, weaponry, etc. I think that's probably a good thing. And especially because just this year, the Pentagon failed its 5th audit in a row. That's 5 years of failed audits. The Defense Department can't get his books straight. This is from an article that asks, why then can it be trusted with an $800 billion budget? Which is a perfect question to ask. And yet, funnily enough, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Matt Gaetzes never say, look, we should rein in spending on defense overall, and in part, we will, cut and or audit the amount of weapons that are going to Ukraine. Like that's never part of their worldview. No. You say we need to cut the Pentagon and defense spending. You are an anti-American. How dare you? Can you imagine, Mike, if Biden hadn't upped the amount of like the billions that he asked for from Congress for the Defense Department? I mean, they'd jump all over him for being weak. So which is it?
That's a great point. And I agree with you. Like if she wants to audit our aid, if she wants to audit the entire Pentagon, all the aid that we give to other countries, don't threaten us with a good time. That's phenomenal to be. But you know that the second that the supposed anti-war Republicans like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene hear calls for a cut to the defense budget, they would screech at the top of their lungs. And let me be very clear, if we were to cut our defense budget in half, we'd still be the world's largest military by a mile. Yeah. It's just that we wouldn't be like 8 times number 2, so they're all posturing and they're not really anti-war. It's just they like Putin and they want their own version of Putin, which they view as Donald Trump. And if we were to flip it and Trump had this second term during the invasion, if Trump were giving aid to Ukraine, which is something that I believe he probably would do because that is what the military industrial complex wants, they would support it in this instance because they kind of have Daddy Putin. So they're kind of working their way backwards from the conclusion that Biden bad. And that kind of leads them to this really weird, uncomfortable position where, okay, I have to be ostensibly against the military in this instance, but only in a limited way. It's very weird. It's inconsistent. And these people have no core ideological beliefs. They don't believe in anti-imperialism. They don't want to actually decommodify war, which is the issue here in the United States. They want authoritarianism here, and they see Daddy Putin as a very good model in the United States. And it's not just Putin, to be clear. It's Viktor Orban. It's anyone who is very harshly silencing critics and attacking democracy, because they're pretty comparable, in my opinion.
Absolutely, so well said. All right, let's move into just another day in the United States where suddenly we are attacking gay people once again, and this is the land of the free. Oh, unless you're LGBTQ. Let's go into this.
The truth be told, if we wanted to address the issue of obscenity and what is harmful to minors, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would not need a bill in the House of Representatives. What they would need is a mirror. It is this majority that until last year defended a member from Waynesboro who admitted to being a child molester when he was a coach. It was my members on the other side of the aisle, my colleagues, who defended a speaker, the former speaker, despite his continuous acts of lewd and inappropriate behavior, including with interns. It was my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who defended a president who talked about grabbing women inappropriately with no shame.
So good. So that is Tennessee Representative Justin Jones just laying out the utter hypocrisy surrounding a new bill that is being sent to the governor's desk that will ban drag shows. Yes, that's right. That is apparently the most important thing going on after 3+ years of a pandemic. Tennessee is both banning drag shows and, gender affirming care. And not just gender affirming care for minors, y'all, gender affirming care for all trans people. And as many activists have said, that's what they were gunning for and have been gunning for in this entire campaign against, supposedly for children's rights, which we know is BS. Both bills are going to be sent to Republican Governor Bill Lee's desk for final approval this week. And they were introduced back in November. And let's look at the actual text on this drag queen show, which is basically like, don't have good time in cool boa. don't do full beat and look fly. No, it seeks to amend an existing state law preventing, quote, adult-oriented businesses from operating within 1,000 feet of schools, public parks, or places of worship to include adult cabaret performances, which the legislation defines as performances that feature male or female impersonators who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest. Prurient, eh? I should have brushed up on my SAT vocab words, but that sounds like prude, just like another word for being prude. I am prude, mad at prurient. Okay, so basically public parks, schools, places of worship, kind of anywhere. I mean, you could pretty much shut down a show. It sounds like anywhere within Tennessee. But hey, maybe there's still a place, but here you go. Let's see, let's go to the actual vote. So the bill passed the Senate earlier this month, 26-6. House Bill 9 passed on Thursday, 74-19, which I believe is the trans affirming care bill. Now heads to Governor Lee's desk, which is expected to be signed into law. The drag ban is the first in the nation to pass state legislature. If you violate that law, if you wanna drag on anyway, if you wanna be fabulous and literally hurt no one, but entertain everybody, you're facing a violation that could be a Class A misdemeanor, punishable by jail time of up to a year and fines totaling up to $2,500. Any subsequent offenses would be a Class E felony carrying a sentence of 1 to 6 years in prison under state law. So let's just take this for what it is. Mike, I mean, not as if the LGBTQ community didn't already feel slightly persecuted living in Tennessee. But now it's just like, any joy, which by the way, you don't necessarily have to be part of that community to be a drag queen, but like, let's just get rid of it all. Here we go, we're banning shows.
Yeah, their goal is to take the queer community back to the pre-Stonewall days. And what's really interesting is that these two bills are just 2 of over 300 introduced in 2023. It's only February. So what they're doing here is they're showing us in real time how they are able to manufacture something out of nothing. Because the Washington Post conducted an analysis over the last 5 years, and there were 0 drag queen bans in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. The only time they started to see this was in November of 2022. And all of a sudden there's this urgency to ban drag shows now. Why is that? Were they not a threat to children in 2020 or 2018? See, this is all just a show. It's a distraction because they don't actually have a real legislative agenda. They don't have any policies that appeal to working class people. So the way that they get legislative support is by demonizing one community. Right now it's LGBTQ people. In a couple of years, maybe it'll be immigrants again. This is their go-to method. And it's disgusting because as they do these types of culture war things, and people who are economically frustrated are tired of talking about identitarian issues. Real people are getting harmed here. I mean, when it comes to gender affirming care, this is the party that's supposedly in favor of parental rights, but gender affirming care is something that parents aren't able to seek out for their children, and it is medically necessary. So this is something that the experts say, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, it'd be like if Republicans tried to control the way that you treat your kid for cancer. If they said no chemo, that's too harsh, you can't do that. It's genuinely disgusting, and this is going to lead to real concrete harm for trans kids in particular who are susceptible to suicidal ideation and suicide attempts more so than their cis peers. So it's despicable, and they know this, but that's the goal. They don't care if trans kids kill themselves. They don't care if this harms the community. The goal is the harm, because not only is that what they want and truly believe in, there's also a lot of political value in these tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a reminder, just to bolster what Mike is saying, the gender affirming care for transgender youth, and this is from the Hill, this is considered safe and medically necessary by most major medical organizations. This is for transgender youth and adults. Look, I understand that the right has like a complete disconnect between like their mental health and their physical well-being, but most people, and especially marginalized people, understand how criminalized their own bodies, their sexualities, their daily lives, who they love are. And so your mental health and your body are linked, right? And if you feel that you are in the wrong body, that you are not the gender that you were assigned at birth, then like what is to prevent you? Who cares? Live your damn life, right? So I think we're talking about that second bill passed in Tennessee, but also, over in Oklahoma, the Senate has passed a bill aiming to ban gender confirming health for minors as well. Now, there's an update to that because there was a new clause that was just added that's going to eliminate gender affirming care for adults. That's right. So no longer is it about, do you have, your faculties and are you an adult? You can vote, you can rent a car, you can drive. No. It's all trans people. So Oklahoma has added an emergency clause to HB 2177. This bill has already passed committee. It'll eliminate almost all adult gender affirming care in the state of Oklahoma. By adding the emergency clause, the bill will go into full effect as soon as the governor signs it. The update is in this section 2, so we can just look at that. It's been it being immediately necessary for the preservation, this is rich, of the public peace, health, or safety. An emergency is hereby declared to exist by reason whereof this act should take effect and be in full force from and after its passage. So again, that is describing eliminating gender affirming care for all people, minors, adults alike in the state of Oklahoma, gone completely. Mike, you laid it out, but who's been fooled by the narrative that this is about children?
Right. The goal was always to ban people in general because this will force people to detransition. And the rationale behind these types of adult trans bans is, well, listen, your brain isn't fully developed until you're 25 years old. So you shouldn't really make these permanent decisions about yourself until then. Meanwhile, we can still force you if you're under 25 to give birth to your rapist's baby.
Yep.
You can buy guns, you can buy alcohol, you can get married. It's just, they're extremely disingenuous, and this is about hate and erasing trans people from existence. And one thing that's really interesting about these bans on gender affirming care is that they carve out specific instances where if you are a cis kid and you're getting puberty blockers or you're getting HRT, that's okay. It's just trans kids. So they make it very clear that there are exceptions only for cis kids. And that just goes to show you what this is all about, because puberty blockers are given to young girls who experience puberty too soon. It's also, hormone replacement therapy. Cis people get that too. It's just about trans people and excluding them from society. And it's honestly, if you look at the UN's criteria for genocide, I think that some provisions, they meet the definition of attempted genocide in some instances, especially if you look at some of these bills in certain states. So it's disgusting, and I feel like it's not necessarily going to get better until there's real resistance from people and from the Democratic Party to combat these narratives, this groomer narrative, and these lies about trans youth. So it's gross.
It is, and it also sort of compounds with the entire difficulty we have in the mental health sphere with access to meds, right? There's a lot of stuff right now. My partner is dealing with an Adderall shortage, right? And all of these meds are under, strict. They're being metered out or whatever. All the ways that we put barriers and roadblocks to people just getting their meds and being able to access that. Forget affordably, right? That's neither here nor there. There's all this stuff. I can just imagine. Also the menopausal cis women who suddenly are unable to access their hormones and are freaking the F out, so Republicans look out, because your wives are gonna be angry at you if you keep on doing this and suddenly they can't get access to their hormones. But again, that's where it's headed. It's we wanted to stop one person who was also look really good in heels from getting, it's just oh my God, the fragility. The fragility. Anyway, that's my first stand-up special. The fragility, y'all. There's more news though, but first a break and your comments after this.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was the white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it though.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Welcome back to Unbossed here, Francesca Fiorentini and Mike Figueredo. Just the most Italian show, yeah?
I'm Portuguese, actually.
Damn it, I thought, you know what?
Sounds Italian though, so.
You know what, yeah, okay, well, I'm only half, so it's, you know, I don't have, my spidey senses isn't there. But from the beard, I was like, first of all, that beard is really lovely. I want to I just can throw that out there. It hasn't always been a thing, I know, but like
I worked very hard on it, so thank you for noticing.
It shows, and it's like not all beards created equal. You know what I'm saying? Like some dudes just kind of like grow it and are like, yeah, set it and forget it. And you're like, no, homie, you need to like comb it. Anyway, the point is, there are comments from members. Hover says the right wing accuses the LGBTQ plus community of grooming, but stays absolutely silent on the abuse at the hands of Catholic priests. Where's legislation addressing the thousands of documented cases of abuse in the states? Yes, it's such an obvious in-your-face conspiracy, i.e. open secret. And then the other thing is, what about their own party? What about like all the George Naders on the Trump campaign, accused pedophile? What about this other, like, I'm not remembering his name, it doesn't matter. Part of the RNC was like right-hand man to Ronna McDaniels, pedophile, convicted pedophile. Like, it just, nope, they don't use the word.
They don't care about.
Oh, Roy Moore, forget about it.
It's so ridiculous.
Matt Schlapp touching his intern's thigh. I mean, then you got George Santos tried his hand at it, but of course, a dude will try anything, or not, and just lie about it. He's like, I also have misconduct allegations. Anyway, on Twitch, Silva says, yay for Fantastic Friday, hell yeah. And Mind Grifter, woo, Fran and Mike. And on YouTube, Snack Panther says, Fran and Mike, what is up? Have an awesome show. Well, thank you. I hope you stick around for it because there's more news. Let's get into it. There is pushback, y'all. It's not over yet in Florida. Take a look.
We're standing in solidarity with students across the state of Florida who are walking out for peace and justice. Who are walking out for academic freedom. So our governor doesn't dictate what our ideas are. Our politics doesn't interfere.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay. Ron DeSantis, go away.
You can't blame the youth. You can't fool the youth. Bob Marley was and is always right. He's done great work. I didn't mean to have a Frederick Douglass moment there. But anyway, the point is, those are students in the state of Florida speaking out and walking out against Ron DeSantis's ongoing war on histories that don't involve white people and, again, the LGBTQ community. These are students at Florida public universities, including Florida State University, the University of Florida, Florida International University, among others, who staged this coordinated walkout on Thursday in protest of Ron DeSantis' ongoing attacks on education, including policies targeting people of color and LGBTQ people. If you are just waking up to this news, welcome. Everything sucks. But specifically, Florida schools districts are banning books en masse, while others are closing their libraries in order to avoid prosecution under a new law that requires a specialist to review every book in school. The new College of Florida president was forced out by the DeSantis-stacked board of trustees and replaced with another DeSantis ally. And if you all didn't know, this is actually there was questions as to whether like the AP board in the state were going to fold under these new restrictions, and indeed they did, banning books from people like Kimberly Crenshaw and James Baldwin and other like seminal, specifically like mostly queer Black authors that dare discuss things like intersectionality, where it's like, no, my gender and my race and my sex all, and my like economic situation and my sexuality, they intermix. And it's like, no. We can only do one thing at a time. But so there you have it. Obviously, if you didn't know, his Don't Say Gay bill, this is DeSantis's, prevents the discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity through third grade. He has lobbied for the Stop Woke Act, which restricts teaching on race in colleges. And he's announced plans to mandate Western civilization courses and to defund diversity, equity, and inclusion programs on state college campuses. And if you needed a reminder about what a POS this man is, and here he is defending the idea that this is the righteous and good thing to do for colleges.
And we want to do history. And that's what our standards for Black history are. It's just cut and dried history. You learn all the basics, you learn about the great figures. And I view it as American history. I don't view it as separate history. We have history, a lot of different shapes and sizes. People that have participated to make the country great, people that have stood up when it wasn't easy, and they all deserve to be taught. But abolishing prisons, being taught to high school kids as if that's somehow a fact, no, that's not appropriate.
This is the most like just so much shade on the legacy of the civil rights movement. They did some good things, like great. Kudos to you, there were dogs and water cannons and and many people died and the CIA and the FBI undermined you, but whatever. Like, it's just so disrespectful. But Mike, he just wants to see everybody as Americans. Everyone, it's all just American history.
Yeah, it's totally believable. I think he's coming from a really good faith place. No, I mean, like, the loyalty to the Republican Party hinges on keeping people uninformed and keeping people stupid, quite frankly. And these, like, the defunding of these programs is actually going to hurt a lot of students. Getting rid of gender studies. I mean, these are real fields of study that matter. Social sciences matter. They may not be as rigorous as like the science, like the hard sciences, right? But these are things that are really matter. And I spoke to someone who goes to Florida State University that I've known for a while, and they're absolutely terrified, but they're not going to back down. And seeing all of the protests and the walkouts, it did give me a little bit of hopium, just because if there was no resistance to this and they kind of just thought that the situation was hopeless, I would feel a little bit more horrified. But they're not backing down. And that really is important, because what we're seeing here is dystopian and Orwellian, and it is full-blown state censorship. And it cannot stand. But he's trying, I think that one article, I can't remember who the author was, put it best, that Ron DeSantis isn't necessarily like the heir to Trump's throne. He really is carving his own fascist lane, and he's mirroring his politics after Viktor Orban. So it's a sort of like American Orbanism. And if you view it through that lens, it makes a lot of sense in the ways in which he's trying to suppress education, trying to whitewash history. And it's it's brainwashing. It's trying to keep the population very, very dumb so they don't challenge the system and institutions that oppresses them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're really, really on the money with that this is not just picking up the MAGA mantle. It's like it is picking up the old satanic panic mantle, right? And all of these things, the rollbacks especially, these were hard fought wins, guys. And for people who don't know, like the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, like there were no such thing as ethnic studies or African American studies, or women's studies or queer studies, right? It did not exist. It was all just, why can't it just be American history? Oops, suddenly we're missing all of these voices. And you never understand history from the lens of people who aren't landowning white straight dudes. Like that's it. And so that fight is something like everything right now that we have to refight again and again, and sadly again. And I agree with you in terms of the hopium. Here we have Malik Gary, who's an organizer for Dream Defenders, who's part of this walkout, saying, Ron DeSantis, we're on our way to take you down, and we're full steam ahead for a better day. For people that work in the minority class, for people of the Black and brown community, for people that identify in the LGBTQIA community, for folks that are somebody, no matter what race, color, or race, or gender, or ethnicity, everybody is somebody and deserves respect. Yeah, I mean, and this is to a guy who says this is where woke goes to die, right? Also, Maxwell Alejandro Frost, again, the first Gen Z member of Congress representing Florida, kind of the only incredible victory that came out of Florida in the midterms there. Ron has said Ron DeSantis has been relentless in his attacks on Florida's education system, creating a hostile classroom environment that target Black, brown, Hispanic, and LGBTQ plus students for simply existing. We have no choice but to use our collective power to make sure DeSantis and his lapdogs at the Department of Education and on the Board of Trustees know that they need to keep their hateful politics out of our schools. Also, I'm sorry, Mike, but whenever you tell an 18-year-old, don't do this, don't learn about that, stop doing X, Y, or Z, what's the first thing they're gonna do? Yeah, don't rip a standing bong. They all have, and they're going to. You know what I'm saying? Like these, like I was an 18 to 21. Like these were my prime militant activist anti-war days. It's galvanizing as hell, man. You tell a kid not to do something, that's exactly what they're gonna do.
Yeah, that is such a good point, because by trying to ban all of these books, you are inadvertently driving up interest in them. Because if you're trying to suppress what somebody is saying, particularly an author who's a woman of color or a queer person, like doesn't that make it more alluring to you? Like I know that I certainly, maybe it's like the inner contrarian in me, but like I want to seek that out. I want to read it, but they desperately don't want people to read it because these books are compelling. Like these are texts that I think are really important for understanding the world, understanding institutions and the ways in which that they affect people on the basis of race and gender and sexual orientation. So they don't want people to see it, but I think that's such a great point that this will end up backfiring in the end.
Yep, they don't want you to know about white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, bell hooks, put it all together. That's what we're fighting, still fighting. All right, let's move on, because there is someone in the running. Is she gonna give Joe Biden a run for his seat? Take a look.
When it comes to our politics, we're not used to having deep, real conversations. I think when it comes to our personal relationships, the American has deep, real conversations as much as anyone else in the world. But we have all been trained when it comes to our collective issues, our political issues, to think like a bunch of 7th graders. We might tell the truth, but not the whole truth, not nothing but the truth. We don't get deep, we don't get real, we don't get direct, and we don't get blunt.
There is Marianne Williamson, author and healer. I'm not sure what she formally identifies, but there she is. She was speaking with the senator on this very show, speaking about the lack of depth, about the clearly the simplicity in our politics, the lack of honestly like a wholeness, right? Like that we approach politics from in all aspects, and she wants to change that. And I gotta say, she's a captivating speaker. She really is, and she's running for president. That's where I was going with this entire segment. She's running for president. She confirms that in 2024, look out Joe Biden. She's gunning for his seat. So she is a prominent progressive. She ran for president in 2020, confirmed in an interview published Thursday she will run for the Democratic nomination for president in 2024. This is speaking to the Medhill news service run by Northwestern. She said, quote, "I wouldn't be running for president if I didn't believe I could contribute to harnessing the collective sensibility that I feel is our greatest hope at this time." A collective sensibility. I don't even know what that is. I'm just like, tell us, Marianne, what's our collective sensibility? I feel like we've lost the scent. We're just a bunch of old bloodhounds, chasing after a, roadkill. I don't know what it is. Anyway, if you didn't know who Marianne Williamson was, she gained notoriety during the 2020 presidential race, especially during the first several presidential primary debates, where some of her spiritual remarks won her fans online. However, her campaign lasted only a year. She dropped out in January 2020. If you needed more of that Williamson woo-woo, and I say that in the best way possible, here she is from 2020.
Donald Trump is not going to be beaten just by insider politics talk. He's not going to be beaten just by somebody who has plans. He's going to be beaten by somebody who has an idea what this man has done. This man has reached into the psyche of the American people, and he has harnessed fear for political purposes. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes.
I've never been so afraid of love in my life. That was very good. Mike, thoughts on Marianne then, Marianne now?
Yeah, so I was actually on a panel with her a couple of years ago, and I'll say the same thing now that I told her. At first, when I heard her speak, I was very turned off because she talked about love and healing, and I thought that's not the mood right now. Like, I'm angry, like I want to burn stuff down, like I don't want to hear this love talk. But the more that she spoke, the more compelling her message was. The more she spoke about reparations and U.S. imperialism in Latin America and dunking on Dave Rubin. It's hard not to fall in love with Marianne Williamson. So I really love that she's challenging Joe Biden. I don't know if he's going to run yet. Nobody really knows. He says he is, but that's not necessarily confirmed. Primarying an incumbent president is very, very difficult, but just coronating him is not an option to me, right? So give him a run for his money, push the conversation left, and elevate the salience of issues that aren't getting discussed currently. Like when Biden was running for president, of course, predictably, he sounded a lot different than he sounds now, although ultimately he said that nothing will fundamentally change. But like, we're not talking about immigration reform as Biden was before he became president. In fact, he's doing very Trumpian policies.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that she's getting in to influence the discourse and just give them hell, because what she has to say is valuable, and she words it in a way that I think that other political commentators like myself don't think about these things. Like, she gives us like a different lens, if that makes sense. And I really appreciate it.
No, I think that's exactly right. And she named it right there, right? She says that it's beyond politics. It's something spiritual and emotional. Like that hate that Trump has stirred up, that's like some id. That is deep, right? That's like a 3-year-old tantrum id. That's like, why can't I have things, And he's tapped into that with that hatred. And so she's offering, and this is what I like, a vision. And I think that's so important, because say there have been some good things, there have been a lot of bad with Joe Biden, but what he does not have and what he is sorely lacking is a vision. He says he doesn't want to, he's like wants to transition this country out of the MAGA moment, but I don't think he is the president to meet the MAGA moment, right? Like, he is not taking fascism seriously, even though he was saying that the reason he got into the race in the first place was after the Charlottesville, horrors, let's be real, right? Like death and Nazis, which is a great reason to jump into a race. But then what's your vision? What are you offering people? Because the white nationalists have a vision. We need a vision. And it reminds me, obviously, of another presidential candidate who did not make it, Bernie Sanders, who continually argues for this multiracial, anti-racist democracy that is inclusive, that is broad, that is actually compassionate, right? Remember when he was asked by Barbara Walters, what do you want to be remembered for? Bernie stops and he goes, compassion. Amazing. I mean, just little spidey, tingly senses. Anyway, but Mike is totally 100% right. Marianne Williamson, not just a spiritual leader, she's spoken a lot about US imperialism, about greed, and she does it in this way that speaks to the soul and not just, sort of the brain in the pocketbook. So we will continue to follow that and follow her. But guys, toys are coming for us. I want you to all know that it's about time we talk about Legos.
Lego is going woke. The company unveiling a range of new characters in the effort to be more inclusive. Lego says the new characters will promote diversity and understanding. Some will have anxiety issues. I don't know how you show that. One will have a missing limb, another Down syndrome. These are really important issues.
Yeah.
Do you want Lego in there?
Definitely not. But what's so fascinating about this story is the divide in the country. Republicans think it's insane that they're forcing identity politics into Legos. Democrats are upset that they didn't make a drag queen stripper.
Oh yeah, I'm more upset by the power clashing that's happening in that man's suit. That is Jimmy Fallon trying to make too much plaid work as he talks about how woke Legos have gone because they are including specifically someone who's handicapped, someone who has anxiety, which I think is really interesting. So then Harris actually kind of makes this interesting point where she's like, I don't want to see that in Legos, right? Like, and so it's a little different than what we've heard, which is we should never have that representation. She's saying, I just don't think we should have that in Legos, which is potentially more of an argument to be made. I don't know, Mike, what are your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, it tells me that they really weren't familiar with Lego. This is a Danish company that doesn't necessarily follow the day-to-days of our culture war. And by their standards, Lego has always been very, very woke. In fact, I'm surprised that they weren't targeted by Fox News last year because they literally released a set called Everyone is Awesome. And it's basically the LGBTQ plus flag, just like represented in Lego form with little figures of each color. And I thought, oh my God. And like when you go to their website also, it had, what does this mean? What does transgender mean? What does intersex mean? And they spelled it out in Legos. And I'm like, is Fox News seeing this? But they didn't. And now when they introduce the characters with anxiety and, missing limbs, that's when they're apoplectic. And it's just, you can tell that they're scrounging like the bottom of the barrel to find some things to be outraged about because, they've covered Dr. Seuss. They've covered
M&Ms,
Mr. Potato Head. So what's left? Of course, Lego, they're next. And this is how you know these people, not only do they not have lives or hobbies, but they don't have a real critique of corporations. Like if you were to critique corporations from any sane, not even the left, but just a sane person's perspective, you might say, well, I wish they'd pay more taxes. I wish that they would consider the environment in the communities that they, are within and how they affect them. But it's just, no, they did something that I'm offended by. So I don't like it, ban it or stop it. It's ridiculous. And I love how they just make things up shamelessly so. He's trying to both sides it and make it seem as if, oh, well, one side says this and the other side says, oh, well, why don't you have a drag queen in it? It's not woke enough. Let me promise you this. You can scour the entire internet. Not a single person said that. I promise you.
No, nobody is arguing for the drag Lego, but that would be tight. We wouldn't be against that at all. But no, there's way more important things. Drag queen Lego maybe like 127th on the list of all the things that we need to fix in this country and the things that we would like. But no, this is the same duo that was like, Xbox is brainwashing your kids around the Green New Deal because it's saving energy for an hour at night, even though it's plugged in. Like, oh my God, it's so sad. And the other thing, yes, you're right about Lego just generally being like pretty progressive. Like I remember when it was like women in STEM and I was like, oh, that's cool. That's very cute. Like, I love that. And I guess here's what I more broadly think. Part of me is like, do we need to have representation in toys? And like being a new mom and, having a kid, I'm like, yeah, actually, that's adorable. I love that. I love that because, again, where the right wants to go, whether it's in education or whether it's in toys and corporations, again, and being mad that corporations want inclusivity, is that they just want everything to be like standard. Like, why can't skin color just be peach again? You know what I mean? Like, why can't, like, that's what they're thinking. They're like, because when you grow, like, again, as a little girl, I remember like Lego always seemed like male. Okay, there's little yellow men, little yellow men, that's it. And like, I remember in Bambi, this is an aside, but I remember in Bambi, like you have like obviously the deer and the rabbit and the skunk, and I was like, oh, they're just animals. And then at the very end, like a hot deer and a hot skunk and a hot rabbit come on, and you're like, oh, they got lashes. Wait, are those the girls? Wait, Thumper's a boy? Like it was this whole weird, like, why are we giving? Like everything was just always standardized male is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And like, it's nice to have representation, whether that's in gender, whether that's in sexuality, whether that's in, oh my God. If someone has one limb, like, I don't know if y'all saw like images of a young girl getting a doll for the first time. She didn't have an arm and the little doll didn't have an arm and she was like in tears. People, just watch that video if you need to know why representation matters. Yeah. But this is the Fox Playbook, of course. Choosy on Twitter, just got to shout this out. Says Fox News is out again. Now they say Lego's going woke. Wait until they find out Crayola has an entire skin tone collection called The Colors of the Wind. Like, Mike, imagine. I mean, look, your people are from Europe, obviously. They colonized. I'm just kidding. I'm holding you personally responsible for Portuguese colonization. But
I was hoping you wouldn't bring this up.
You think you can get one by me, but I know what you did last century. No, but it's like, again, this is the master race. And by the way, like Harris Faulkner is black. Mm-hmm. We can see that. Like she's, carrying water for the, a white supremacist, a racist institution and news outlet. But if you're the master race and Nazis, correct me if I'm wrong, like how are you gonna get so fragile about this kind of stuff? Why do you care if a Lego isn't always yellow, i.e. white? Why are you yellow? Do you think the Simpsons are white? What if the Simpsons are black this whole time?
Yeah, as if like white people are existentially threatened by more representation. I mean, growing up, every single superhero, every character was a dude. Every video game that I played, the protagonist was a male. And so like, I've never had to think about these things. That's white male privilege. But like growing up, becoming an uncle, realizing, wait, there's no black princesses. Like I want my niece to know that she can be a princess too. Like like it's little things and it seems like it's not significant, but it really does contribute to self-image and your views of the world. So like if you're represented, I think that really matters. Like I think that it's important that black girls have black princesses, and
black scientists.
Black scientists, exactly. Which goes back to Lego. So this set is the Lego Friends line that they have. I know this because I bought this set from my niece before, and I think it's great. They have like the little STEM sets, like you said. They have sets of women scientists working for NASA. I love this because it's not like an explicit agenda. It's just letting little girls know, hey, guess what? You can be whatever you want to be. And maybe that kind of plays into the American dream, different conversation for a different day. But I think that it is really important. It matters that girls have the confidence to think that they can achieve what men can achieve. Maybe that's not necessarily true today, but like it starts with giving them confidence and seeing themselves in media and pop culture and in toys. So I like the representation. I think it matters. And I think they need to stop being so hysterical and stop being little snowflakes and just shut up. Stop complaining about everything. Jesus, I
exactly. And stop mistaking corporate pivots for a broader audience to make themselves money for some agenda that the left wants. That is not on our agenda. We want universal health care, we want a Green New Deal, and we want to move money, in my opinion, out of the police and into communities. Yes. That's what we want. This is not on our list, all right? So talk about the real issues, get over your green M&M fetish. But hey, it fills television, the most watched news network in the country. Mike Figueredo, it's been way too short, but so sweet. Where can people find you and your work?
You can find me over on YouTube, The Humanist Report. I also host the show, The Leftist Mafia, every Thursday. Check that out. Yeah, I'm just around. I've been around. I'll always be around.
He's been around. That beard keeps growing, and he ages like a fine wine. Even though,
thank you so much.
You're welcome. And have me on that show, but also come on my show, the Bitchuation Room podcast. Everyone listen to it, watch it on all the things at Franny Fio. And with that, it has been such a pleasure filling in for the senator. Until Monday, I don't remember the sign off, but I love y'all. Bye-bye.